This camera costs $100. And this one right here costs $3,500. I'm gonna take both these cameras with me on a video shoot and get some video comparisons, as well as take a bunch of photos with these cameras and see, is there really a 35 times performance difference between these two cameras? So without further ado, let's get right into it. So for the $100 camera, we have the Sony NEX-5N. This is a camera I've talked about a bunch on my channel. I still think it's pretty much the best camera you can get for video if you're talking about that sub $100 price point. It records 1080p video at 24 and 60 frames a second. Of course, no 4K video in a $100 camera. Probably give it like 5 more years and then that'll be a thing, but 1080p only. As the Sony E-mount, which is actually the same as the $3,500 camera, so you can use the exact same lenses with both of these. It's 16 megapixels, which is actually more than this camera, which we'll get into. 1080p up to 60 frames a second. There's no mic inputs, which kind of sucks. You know, it doesn't shoot any really great codecs or anything like that, just basic 1080p video. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Super small, super tiny, which is great, but $100 camera. And then for the $3,500 camera, we have the Sony a7S III. This is pretty much the most popular camera for semi-professional filmmaking. This is literally what like every semi-professional filmmaker uses nowadays. It's full frame, it records 4K up to 120 frames a second, it has a fully articulating flip screen, really good autofocus, bunch of buttons and dials, you can customize everything, it shoots a bunch of great codecs, like I said, 4K up to 120 frames a second, 1080p at 240 frames a second. It's fully weather sealed, it's got an insane amount of features, and like I said, it's a $3,500 camera, so it pretty much does everything you need it to do. So like I said, I took both these cameras out on a video shoot recently. I actually shot a music video and did some direct comparisons between both of these. They both had a 24mm full frame equivalent lens on them. I also shot a spec ad with these and did some photo comparisons. So I did a bunch of comparisons between both of these cameras. And spoiler alert, obviously the $3,500 camera is better in pretty much every aspect. Like, if the $100 camera was better than a $3,500 camera with pretty much anything besides maybe size and weight, I'd be a little concerned. So obviously this camera's better in every single way. However, how noticeable the difference is for the final product of a video or a photo, that's definitely a lot harder to tell, and that's kind of what we're gonna get into. You know, just the final products, what it looks like back to back with both of these cameras in terms of video and photos. So without further ado, let's see what these two cameras are capable of. So like I said earlier, the Sony NEX-5N actually has more megapixels than the a7S III. And so for this test here, I basically put some really sharp lenses on both these cameras and snapped them down to around f4. So that lens sharpness isn't a super big factor. And then I basically just wanted to test out the sensor resolution, you know, crop in a bunch and just see which one looks sharper. And as you can see, the NEX-5N actually does look sharper. I don't want to call this a very scientific test because, you know, the lenses definitely could play a factor in this. I'm pretty sure I nailed focus, and I'm actually really surprised how much sharper the NEX-5N looks over the a7S III. However, most people aren't going to be cropping in 400% on a photo. You know, most people are going to see a photo on a phone screen on Instagram or something, and you're really not going to notice this difference as much. And so let's actually move into some more real-world comparisons between these two cameras. So there honestly just isn't a noticeable difference between these. Obviously, I'm not pushing either camera to its limits. You know, if there was a lot more contrast between the highlights and the shadows, or if any of these were in extreme low light, obviously the a7S III would pull ahead. But for just normal photos like these, if you take the time to, you know, get good lighting, get good exposure, get good focus, both of these cameras can produce amazing looking photos. So now let's take a look at video. So I shot these comparisons on set of a music video that I shot. I'm gonna link that music video down in the description. I've actually shot a few music videos for this artist. He's a good friend of mine, so definitely check that out in the description. All future music videos will also be shot by me, so definitely subscribe to that channel as well if you want to see more music videos. But either way, I used the highest resolution and codec and basically the highest possible quality that I could record with both of these cameras. And so that would be 4K 60 frames a second in S-Log3 on the A7S III, and then 1080p at 60 frames a second on the NEX5N. And so with video, this is where you can definitely start to tell a big difference. I used continuous autofocus with face tracking on both of these cameras, and also both the lenses on these cameras are really good with autofocus, and you can clearly see the NEX5N struggles with keeping focus on the subject, while the A7S III literally has no issues. I don't think it missed focus once. And then also sharpness and dynamic range is a huge difference between these as well. I mean, you can clearly see a difference between these. The NEX5N video honestly just looks blurry even when it's in focus compared to the A7S III. I mean, this really goes to show why everyone loves the A7S III so much. It produces just amazing quality video. It's super sharp, really high dynamic range, amazing autofocus, and of course the NEX5N, you know, being 10 years older, it just cannot compete in video. However, definitely don't click off the video. Like I said, I did shoot an actual spec ad with these cameras, and I think there's a lot less of a difference when you see that versus, you know, something like this. Because this video was more of a run and gun thing. We couldn't perfect the lighting, we couldn't perfect, you know, everything with this. However, with this spec ad, I shot it in my studio with all my lighting. And I think when you can control everything, there's much less of a difference, and the NEX5N can still create some great looking video. And so let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. I'm actually gonna put camera A and camera B. So while you're watching, you can kind of guess which camera's which, and then I'll reveal it at the end. So here's the ad right here. Alright, so as you can see, I actually only used camera A for like 2 shots out of this entire thing, and that was actually the A7S III. So almost the entire ad was shot with the NEX5N. And you know, you probably couldn't tell as big a difference as you could, you know, at that other footage that we looked at from the music video. You know, when everything's lit correctly and done correctly, you know, it still creates good looking video. But basically that wraps up all the testing I did. At the end of the day, with photos, it's really hard to tell a difference. Both of these cameras, even a $100 camera, can produce great looking photos. And then video, you can definitely tell a difference side by side. You know, when you look at that music video footage, the $100 camera does not look that good. You know, of course, when you look at the footage side by side and you're comparing it, obviously the A7S III looks levels upon levels better than the NEX5N. But when it's not a direct comparison, you know, thrown at you like that, when it's just video shot on the NEX5N like that ad, you can still make good looking videos with this camera. So is it a 35 times performance difference? I don't think so. They're obviously tools meant for different things. You know, if you need professional, like super high quality video and you have a big budget, the A7S III is a great camera. But I don't think you should let that discourage you from using a $100 camera for recording videos or taking photos. So, you know, I think there's a solid probably 10 times difference between these two cameras, but in terms of image quality itself, definitely nowhere near a 35 times difference. Alright, so that basically wraps this video up. If you want to see more videos about the Sony NEX5N and pretty much any of the Sony NEX series cameras, which are all really great budget cameras for photos and videos, I have a bunch of videos about them on my channel. I'll be making more in the future. And I also have more videos about the A7S III coming soon, so if you want to hear more about either of these two cameras or any sort of budget filmmaking gear, definitely go down, hit the like button, and subscribe to my channel. And that's it for this one, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.